All right, today we're jumping into one of the biggest, most fundamental debates in all of philosophy, the existence of God. We're going to explore the core arguments for atheism, but also the serious academic critiques leveled against them, all based on the fantastic analysis of the scholar Ömer Faruk Erdem. So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get a solid definition of atheism. Then, we'll dig into the arguments that come from science. After that, we'll look at the case that God is actually a human invention, and we'll wrap it all up by reframing this whole debate around something called the burden of explanation. Okay, first things first, before we can really get into the arguments and the counter-arguments, we have to be super clear on what we're actually talking about. What is atheism really? Where did this idea even come from? And the word itself, which comes from ancient Greek, pretty much tells you what you need to know. At its very core, atheism is a philosophical position. It's a direct rejection of the central claim of theism, the idea that some kind of supernatural, creative being exists. Instead, it argues that reality is just the physical world. That's it. Now, you might think this is a new idea, but the concept of a godless universe has been floating around for thousands of years. But as the source points out, it wasn't really until the 19th and 20th centuries that all these different ideas were pulled together into the formal, systematic philosophies we know today. Okay, this is where things get really interesting. Let's get into the first major pillar of modern atheist thought. It's a case built entirely on a scientific worldview, one that says the material world is all there is, and it's all you need to explain everything. And that really is the question, isn't it? Does science give us a complete enough picture of the cosmos that the whole idea of a creator just becomes, well, unnecessary? Is God just a gap in our knowledge that science is slowly but surely filling in? So, the classic materialist argument goes something like this. If matter and the universe have just always been here, then you don't need a creator to kick things off. Simple. But, and this is a huge but, the author points out that modern science itself actually throws a big wrench in that idea. Things like the Big Bang Theory and the laws of thermodynamics strongly suggest the universe isn't eternal. It seems to have had a definite beginning. And this is where we run into a major philosophical problem with an eternal past. Think about it with this famous thought experiment, Hilbert's Hotel. Imagine a hotel with infinite rooms and every single room is full. A new guest shows up. Can you fit them in? Bizarrely, yes. You just move everyone down one room. But wait, that leads to a logical contradiction. How can a hotel that's completely full still have room? This paradox suggests that a real, physical infinity, like an infinite number of past moments, just might not be possible. Okay, so if the universe isn't eternal, what's the next argument? Well, it's that everything we see, all the order, all of life, is just the result of random chance playing out over billions of years. But the critique of this idea is powerful. It focuses on how unbelievably, precisely fine-tuned the laws of physics are. It's like the universe is balanced on a knife's edge just to allow for life to exist. Just to give you an idea of how insane the odds are, the source brings up physicist Robin Collins. He calculated the chances of just one physical constant, the force of gravity, being exactly right for life. The number is less than 1 in 10 to the power of 60. That's a 1 with 60 zeros after it. Explaining that by pure chance, well, for many, that takes more faith than believing in a creator. And what about evolution? Well, this is a big one. The source makes a really key point here. This isn't necessarily evolution versus God. You see, a theist could just as easily say that God used evolution as the tool for creation. The author notes that the much deeper problem for the atheist view isn't explaining the variety of life, but explaining how life got started from non-living stuff in the first place. That's a question evolution itself doesn't even try to answer. All right, let's switch gears completely. We're moving away from the cosmos and the laws of physics, and we're going to look inward at the human mind. The next set of arguments says that God isn't some external reality. He's something we created. And you can't talk about this idea without mentioning this famous line from Karl Marx. He didn't see religion as a claim about what's true or false. For him, it was a social tool, kind of a painkiller given to the oppressed to make them feel better about their suffering and keep them from rising up. So the broader argument is that religion is just something societies invent to keep things stable. But the source really pushes back on this. If you look at history, you find tons of examples of religious figures and movements that were the exact opposite. They were radical, they were revolutionary, they didn't support the powerful, they stood up and challenged them. The philosopher Ludwig Feuerbach takes this a step further into the realm of psychology.
He argued that we don't discover God, we invent him. We take all of our own best qualities, our love, our wisdom, our power, and we project them onto this giant imaginary screen in the sky and call it God.
Now, this is where the critique gets really clever. The author points out that you can flip this argument completely on its head. Okay, maybe belief in God is just wish fulfillment for a cosmic father figure. But couldn't atheism also be a form of wish fulfillment? You know, the wish that there's no ultimate judge, no final accountability for your actions? It's an argument that cuts both ways.
And that brings us to the existentialists, and probably the most dramatic line in all of this, from Friedrich Nietzsche. For him, God is dead wasn't a celebration, but it was a necessary event for humanity to finally be free.
The idea here is that to be truly free, to create our own meaning and values, we can't have a divine scriptwriter telling us our lines. But the counter-argument is a tough one. If we're nothing more than matter, just atoms and chemicals, are we really free at all? Or are we just complicated machines acting according to the laws of physics? You see, getting rid of God might not lead to freedom. It could lead to nihilism, a universe where nothing has any ultimate meaning. So after going through all of these arguments and all of these critiques, where does that actually leave us? Well, this final section reframes the whole conversation. It shifts the goal from finding absolute proof to asking which worldview has more explanatory power. And to make this point crystal clear, the author uses this fantastic analogy. Just imagine you're shipwrecked on what you think is a totally deserted island. And then, in the sand, you find a single, perfect human footprint. Here's what the analogy means. The theist looks at things like the fine-tuning of the universe and sees a footprint, evidence pointing to an intelligent cause. Now, the atheist can absolutely say, hey, I'm not convinced that's a footprint. Fair enough. But, and this is the key, the conversation doesn't end there. The burden then shifts to the atheist to provide a better explanation for how that footprint got there by purely random, unguided chance. Just saying, I don't believe, isn't an explanation. And this chart really lays it out perfectly. It shows that both positions are making a positive claim about the world. Theism says an intelligent mind is the best explanation. Atheism, as a full-fledged philosophy, says non-intelligent processes are the best explanation. And because they're both making a claim, they both have a burden to explain why their view makes the most sense of the evidence. So you see, in the end, according to this analysis, the question really grows up. It stops being a simple yes or no question and becomes something much deeper. Which worldview, theism or atheism, gives us a more satisfying and coherent explanation for reality itself? And that leaves us with this final, massive question that really gets to the heart of it all. When we're dealing with ideas this big, where hard scientific proof might just be out of reach for either side, is not having proof for something the same as having proof against it? Thank you for joining me for this explainer.